Welcome, Sally. Tell us about the world of drones.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to all meet you guys. Thanks so much for joining. Again, if you have anything that you want to ask, we want to save most of the questions to the end, but there is a ton of information. We only have an hour, so we are going to have to speed through some things. So if something went by too fast, feel free to stop me and jump in and ask a question. All right, so I will go ahead and share my screen with you. And we will get started. So my background in drones, I got into drones about 3 years ago. It's such a new industry. And I started doing drones when I was a student in college. We actually had a drone class. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Jump in and tell me if you can't.
Yes, it's there.
Great. So, I'm curious to sort of get to know you. So if you guys want to post in the chat box, I'm curious how many of you have seen a drone before. So many people now, 2 years ago, they were like, what is that? And now it seems like everyone has seen a drone before. And I guess all of you guys have a video and a photography background, which is really great. I want to kind of know your goals with drones, if you're in it to do this professionally, or if you just want to learn more about them and do them for fun. So post in the chat box some things that you're looking to get out of this. So who am I? I do have a separate site called the DroneGirl. So it's a blog all about drones. You can find me here on Instagram and Twitter. I've talked at places like South by Southwest about drones. They're huge there. I did a panel with the FAA administrator, Michael Huerta. We've done demos at the Harvard Business School, and I do have the FAA remote pilot certification. And so we'll talk more about that later and what it really is. So as I said, I got into drones in college. It was totally random. They were offering a drone course. I needed 1 credit to graduate. And so I pretty much said, this is the only thing that fit into my schedule. And so there's us flying in class. We had a big arena that they used for the campus livestock. And so we flew in there. We studied the laws, ethics, the technical procedures of offering drones. So totally got into a chance, much like many of you probably just signed up for this sort of randomly because you already belong to ASMP. Brad Pitt was actually a student at University of Missouri, where I studied drones. He needed 1 credit to graduate, and he actually dropped out and moved to Hollywood. I took the drone course, and I feel like I'm much better off. So that's my story. So some of the things that we did is we actually flew drones to show things like natural disasters is primarily what we were doing. So we worked with an NPR local affiliate station, and we did things like this video that you can see happening right here. There was a prairie fire happening, and so we made this video. You would often see this on a news site is sort of, a mix of talking heads, of wide shots, of all the different angles. So this right here on the screen right now, these are all drone shots. This was really cool because we could see exactly how far how far the fire was from the freeway, how big the fire was. So this shot of the firefighter walking, you don't get a huge sense of what's really going on, but with this drone shot, you can see how close it is to these cars going by. I will preface this, we worked very closely with the fire department to make this video happen. You might have heard in the news, people, just flying drones over fires, just, to get the shot. And that actually interferes with a lot of firefighters have helicopters to actually do the firefighting. That's super dangerous. So this is just my disclaimer. Don't just go out and shoot fires. It's usually a no-fly zone. You cannot fly over fires, but we got a lot of permission and worked with them closely to, we had a whole plan, if the fire came over here, then we had to move and, all that. So this was planned. So I do want to go over some other things that people use drones for. I know you're probably really in it for the photography or the videography, but I think it's important to give you kind of a little background of what other people do. So drones usually do work that's usually too dangerous for a human to do. Think of, a cell tower inspection. Is it really safe to send a human climbing up so far in the air? A drone can do that. They do things that are otherwise impossible given how low drones can fly. So I say this especially to my photographers. A drone is often best getting the shot that's higher than a ladder or higher than a selfie stick, but lower than a helicopter. And so a helicopter, you can get that, really, really wide view of, the whole town sometimes. But the cool thing about the drone spot is kind of fitting into those tight spaces, maybe going underneath the bridge. You couldn't necessarily do that with a selfie stick, but a helicopter certainly couldn't do that either. They can even fit indoors. And then they can also do work that needs to happen immediately or for a fraction of the cost that a manned helicopter would cost. So to give you an overview, as of September, it's a little outdated, but there were 260 piloted aircraft registered with the FAA. So every piece of aircraft needs to be registered with drones. Every drone operator needs to be registered. So not totally fair comparison, but still 260,000 piloted aircraft. And about twice that is people registered as drone operators. So just to give you some context of how huge the drone industry already is. I just want to add this in here. You may hear drones referred to as many of these things: quadcopter, multicopter, UAS, SUAS, alphabet soup, all of these different acronyms. So if you see something like UAV or UAS, it's a drone. So we're just going to say drone for the sake of making this day easy, but you might hear different things. So a lot of people wonder, what is a drone? Is it just any type of RC flying thing? Is it any type of robot? What is it? I've even kind of struggled with this, but the FAA did recently come out with the definition. So it's any aircraft. So it does need to be flying. Any aircraft operated without the possibility of direct human intervention from within or on the aircraft. So this means a person could be flying in a plane. So a drone could carry a human, but it can still fly without having that human intervention. And it can land, take off, do the whole flight without anyone on the aircraft actually controlling it. So there's your definition. I do want to go over, I know most of you are photographers, but also I want to show you some other use cases of drones. And I think this is important. Especially just getting other gigs. People know you're a photographer, but you have a drone with a camera. Maybe you can do a gig and do some work for a farmer. Even if that's not necessarily what you want to do, there is a lot of money in this industry. So I do want to give you a heads up about it. So one of the big use cases is farming. So you can see this little drone here on the left is actually spraying something. I don't know if it's water or pesticides, but it really makes it be precise. So usually a plane will throw pesticides all out over the ground, and it's not good for the environment if pesticides are going places they don't need to be. It's a waste of money because they're spending money on pesticides in places where they don't need to be, but then they could be concentrated in one place. So that's really useful. This image here on the right, for thermal imaging, you can see very visually this is what different pieces of land look like, and farmers can use this data to say, oh, we need to water this more, or we need to harvest this now. So farming is a huge use case. Search and rescue. Usually when a hiker is lost, they're over really dangerous, rocky, hilly terrain. So they'll send out search and rescue crews. Now a drone can do that, particularly once you put a thermal camera on it. Even at night, they'll usually shut down search and rescue operations but a drone can still operate at night because the whole forest will be black, and then you'll see that white body of a person and really easily spot them. It's very common for there to be news stories like a search and rescue mission lasting 5 days, and then, you know, some hobbyist says, I'm going to take out my drone, and within 5 minutes they find the person. There are even volunteer groups that you can volunteer and become a search and rescue drone operator, if that's just something that you're interested in. Of course, Hollywood is huge. So there's all kinds of movies shot with drones. There's, you know, Captain America, Jurassic Park, the Smurfs. And again, you see this view on the left of these, you know, they're helicopters. And so really think about how a drone can get a lot lower than a helicopter and often a lot safer. So I want to show you this clip from Skyfall. Sorry, they make us watch an ad before. But I really want you to think about, as we get into the photography aspect of this, you know, how low to the ground these guys get. So here's a scene from Skyfall. They're taking off in their motorcycles. They're inside right now, and they're about to shoot outside. So they're on this roof, and this right here is your first drone shot. And you can see this is all a drone shot. Sorry, we're going to cut inside a little bit, and then we'll go back, and I want you to look a little bit at these drone shots right here. So as you can see, it's much lower than a helicopter. It would be so unsafe for a helicopter to be that low to those roofs. But you also can't have, you know, huge dolly rigs up on all of these roofs. This very clearly is shot by a drone. And I'll let you watch the rest of that later, just for the sake of timing. But I do love that video. I do want to show you some other really cool drone shots. There is something called the New York City Drone Film Festival. And so here are some of the videos. It's a little compilation. I'm going to send this out. It's about 5 minutes, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but start thinking about the shots that you want to take with the drone. So obviously these landscape shots are really, really beautiful. You can do just crazy things. I mean, this is over a volcano. You wouldn't want to send a helicopter over a volcano, but a drone, you know, if you lose it, it's only $1,000, no big. A helicopter with a person inside, that would be obviously a lot more risky. And think about shots, patterns on the ground are really awesome. So you can see this is just solar panels, but how cool that looks. Tracking shots, there's a lot of the drones that you can buy for, you know, $500 will have a device that you can wear on your body, and you can actually track the person, so the drone can just fly back and follow them. So in the cases like there was the surfer back there, the skier can wear that on the body, and the drone will actually follow them. And then this is actually a racing drone. So this one you can see it's doing flips and all of that. You can buy racing drones for as little as $400 to get those videos that let them do that kind of aerobatic shot. Here's more of those racing drone videos to get those kind of stunt views. And I'll let you watch the rest of that later. We'll send along some of the links. Other use cases, firefighting. Firefighters can use these to fly over structure fires and see the safest point of entry and see, you know, there's fire on this side but not the other side. So we'll send our rescuers in there. Again, the thermal cameras to see if there's still people in the building. And often, you know, I've heard stories of people who are photographers but want to volunteer with their local fire department and kind of use their drone for good too. Wildlife protection, flying over to spot poachers. Again, this is a thermal camera, so you can see animals, and then you could also detect if there was a human in there. I do want to show you some really cool pieces of photography. So I think one of the greatest uses of drones is really looking at these cool patterns on the ground. I think this shot really captures that. There's also, the really, really cool kind of, magical looking shots and how they got the clouds in the city in here. Again, kind of the patterns in the crowd, excuse me. This looks like a snowboarder right here. And I could totally see this shot running in some place like, the Olympics is, instead of, always having that close up of the swimmer's face, getting, a whole view of the whole swimming competition. And do we have any journalists in the audience? This is a lot of people talk about how drones can be used for journalism. So I showed you the wildlife use case earlier, but covering protests is something that people always say when I say what can people use drones for, and you might have heard about drones in Standing Rock being used for that. So here's one example of protests in Thailand. They happened in 2013. One of the big facts in the story is that 28,000 people were there. So how many of you could tell me or know and can visualize what 28,000 people looks like? So yeah, not a lot of people can do that. So here is the image that the Guardian ran. Doesn't really show me that 28,000 people were there, but this is not, neither bad nor good photo, just as your typical protest photo. Here's the photo that the Washington Post ran on their front page to talk about these protests. Again, this is sort of to be expected. It's a fine photo, maybe not the most memorable. And then here's the photo that the Nation ran. And this was shot on a drone. And this to me is so powerful because, often, how many of you guys hear of a protest happening and then there's like 10 people there? And you wouldn't really know because a photo from the ground could show all 10 people, and that looks like a full photo. That looks like a lot of people were there, but it was really just 10. So this is 28,000 people out in a crowd, and you can see these people are piling into this square. So all these colors are all people, and you really could only show this with, of course a helicopter could show this too, but a drone can really show this so much more powerful than something, back here of people protesting. And I think this is also an important photo, but, to have multiple photos in this story, to really tell the whole story is really important. So sort of similar deal, I'm going to show you the Wall Street Journal did some video of protests in Hong Kong. And so they actually had, oh, sorry, we have to watch an ad, keep journalism alive. So they also had drones flying over people. And I do want to preface this really quickly. So both of these things I've showed you are Thailand and Hong Kong. Currently in the US, you cannot fly over people legally. So I'm assuming you guys are based in the US, most of you. So don't just fly over protests tomorrow. There are ways that you can get around it. You can get permission. But in other countries, the rules are different. So in Hong Kong, these drones were able to get this footage of all these people piling into the streets in Hong Kong. And really get this really powerful shot and show, how many people care about this and are taking over this whole, all these roads to protest. Other uses are for investigative journalism, not necessarily the pretty photo or the really, the photo that you want to hang on your wall, but you can also get images that really tell the story. So you can see this field here. Someone who actually is a drone, they blog on drones, they found this, and they were flying their drone near a Dallas meatpacking plant. And they were just, flying around and looking at their images later, and they noticed this red kind of in the corner, and they said, "Oh my gosh, I think is that what I think it is? Is that blood?" And so they didn't actually do, a story on it for journalism, but they actually reported it to these wildlife agencies, and they executed a search warrant. And actually, they found that this factory was illegally dumping the meat and the blood. And so if you're any investigative journalists out there, drones can show you and find you actual stories. This is what most people want to know about, is how they legally fly drones, and this is probably the hottest topic. So feel free to jump in if you guys have any questions. So how do you legally fly drones for commercial or hobby purposes? So first, we'll talk about hobby purposes because it's the most simple. So this means you are not making any money off of it. It is a super gray area. So how many of you guys have YouTube accounts and make money off of your YouTube videos? So that's kind of a gray area because you didn't really shoot the drone for commercial purposes, but you are making some money off of your YouTube video. So is that a commercial purpose? It is a super, super gray area. I'll just be honest with you about that. But if you are just a hobby photographer and love to shoot photos for fun, there's no testing required. All you have to do is register with the FAA. You need to be at least 13 years old. If you have a kid who wants to fly a drone, they can. You just need to, as their parent or guardian, need to register for them. And so if they do something illegal and crazy, basically you're the one who is in charge and has to take that responsibility. So it is easiest to remain in Class G airspace, and we'll talk about that later, what Class G airspace is, but most airspace is Class G airspace. You need to file or follow all notice to airmen. So the FAA will send out notices basically saying you can or cannot fly here because of certain special events. You need to follow all FAA rules around hobby use. We'll talk about that later. And again, also adhere to rules on private property and also national parks. They have said explicitly you cannot fly drones here. And while you can fly over private property, you do not own the airspace above your private property. The FAA actually does. You can say nobody can bring a drone onto my private property, just like I can say, you have to wear pants on my private property. So you may not be able to take off your drone on someone's private property. So think like a university campus or someplace like that. Okay, so the first thing for hobby drone users is that your aircraft has to be registered. So any drone weighing more than 50 or 0.55 pounds, so half a pound, on takeoff must be registered, and that weight limit includes everything on board, including the battery, cameras, if delivering tacos, all that is wrapped up into the 0.55 pounds. So they say that's 2 sticks of butter. Actually, the FAA officially said that 2 sticks of butter weighs 0.5 pounds. So if it's less than that, so often you'll get little toy drones off Amazon. And we'll talk about that later, but I do recommend you start with a little $30 toy drone. I'm guessing that'll be less than half a pound and you won't have to register that. So to register your drone, you go to this site, registermyuas.faa.gov. This is exactly a screenshot from the site. You just click register. You just have to type in your email, make a password, and then you create an account. So you say, since we're talking hobby purposes, you're going to register for hobby purposes here on the left. And then basically all you do is you type in your name, your email address. You do have to pay a $5 fee. I didn't give you my side of my credit card. But you basically get this card. This is your certificate number. So this is my actual certificate number. And then you just put it on a place on your drone. It can be anywhere that it can be accessed. Write it on something that can be removed in case you sell your drone, because the number is tied to you, not your drone. So that certificate number will stick with me for my life. And if I have 10 drones, I just write the same number on all 10 drones. And then I don't want my number on your drone. because, if you crash and do something reckless, I'll get in trouble. So if I sold my drone to you, I would just want to put it on like a piece of tape or something that I can just rip off. And then when I sell it to you, now it's your problem and you have to put your registration number on it. Anyone can operate your drone with your registration number. But again, if it's your registration number on it, you're the one taking the responsibility for it. So when you do register your drone, you do check off guidelines that you say you will follow. So by registering your drone, you have told the FAA, I will follow these rules. So I do want to go through all of these. They're really important. So flying below 400 feet, this is actually really, really high. You think about one floor tends to be about 10 feet. So one story is 10 feet typically. So you can, kind of think of how far 400 stories is. Never ever fly near other aircraft. Always yield to manned aircraft. If you see one coming, make sure your drone is far out of the way. You always have to keep your drone within line of sight, within visual line of sight. So you cannot fly it outside to a place that you cannot no longer see. And you'll see this when people put on FPV goggles, so they look kind of like virtual reality goggles, and that actually lets them see what the drone's camera sees. And even if you have something like a DJI Phantom, the drone will let you see what the camera is seeing through something like your iPhone. So people will fly the drone outside of their line of sight, but that's illegal, so don't do that. Keep away from emergency responders, so stay away from the fires. Don't fly over fires. Never fly over stadiums, sporting events, groups of people. Never fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And never fly within 5 miles of an airport without first contacting air traffic control. You would be surprised at how many of you might actually live within 5 miles of an airport and not know it. 5 miles is actually pretty big. So we'll actually go over later how to determine that. There are airspace restrictions, so airports and wildfires, stadium and sporting events. Then there are things called temporary flight restrictions, and so you'll hear it just referred to as a TFR. And so this is something that they'll put in place, the FAA will put in place for a special event. So during, a huge gathering of people around, like the Super Bowl, they'll put in a TFR for everyone's safety. Also, President Obama is in town. For his safety, they'll put a TFR around where he is. And then restricted airspace, these will be places like military bases. And we'll go over how to find airspace restrictions later. But you cannot fly in those places. So again, the FAA actually says it is actually illegal to fly within 3 nautical miles of a stadium for any of these events: Major League Baseball, football, Sprint Cup, IndyCar, and Champ Series races. The other sports, I guess they don't care about, but these are the sports. Sorry, my hockey fans, the FAA doesn't care about those. But there's also these TFRs, which I mentioned. They'll also put these in place during something like a chemical spill or a wildfire. Again, you cannot fly within 5 miles of an airport unless you get permission, but you can get permission. The easiest way to do this is to pick up the phone and call them. And so you're actually never, ever, as a recreational hobbyist, allowed to fly in Class B airspace, which is the most crowded airports. Think LAX or SFO, O'Hare. You're never allowed to fly in Class B airspace, but a lot of you might live near little tiny airports. I used to live in Burbank, pretty close to the Bob Hope Airport, and it's like this little tiny airport. So if you need to fly above your house in Burbank, you're gonna be within 5 miles of Bob Hope Airport. Typically, you can call air traffic control, let them know you're doing this, and they can usually make it happen. So I do want to give you, I know this is a ton of information, so stop me if this is too much, but I do want to give you some type of overview so you know what you're talking about when it comes to airspace. Who would have thought as a photographer you need to know about airspace? But So Class A airspace is above 18,000 feet. You will never get there. Class B airspace, this is airspace around the biggest airports, like I mentioned, LAX. So you as a hobbyist can never fly there, but as a commercial pilot, you could possibly fly there with permission. Then there's Class C airspace. These are sort of those smaller airports. Then it actually goes all the way, there's a D also, which is like really, really tiny airports. And then there's Class E. This is kind of a weird one. It's above 10,000 feet. MSL means median sea level. But Class G, this is most places that you're going to be flying. Class G, it goes up to 14,000 feet, and then it becomes Class E. Again, your drone will never ever be able to fly higher than 14,000 feet, so you don't need to worry about it. But most places, Class G is unregulated airspace. The FAA does not regulate what's happening in Class G airspace, so you can fly there. This is the best place to fly. So if you want to figure out where can I fly and you don't want to learn about all the airspace and you don't want to learn about what a NOTAM is or a TFR is and too much information, I'm instead going to give you this site. It's called AirMap. So all of you guys can log onto your computers right now. If you have an extra screen or something, go to app.airmap.io. The URL is up here in the top left. And this site will actually tell you where you can and can't fly. So I live in San Francisco, so we're gonna show you San Francisco, but you can totally do this on your own right now. If you think you want to fly around your house or you've got some other cool place, try it out. Punch in the coordinates right now. So this is Class B airspace. My San Francisco friends know SFO is right here in the center. So this is 5 miles around SFO. This is actually a lot of space. So if you live in, San Mateo or Burlingame, or these cities around here, if you're familiar with San Francisco, you cannot fly a drone in your backyard. Just good to know that before you buy a drone. Class C airspace, so we're going to add on some of these smaller airports. So Oakland Airport or a San Jose Airport becomes Class C airspace. Class D airspace, these are even tinier little airports. One of my friends is a pilot and he takes off from Palo Alto Airport, and I didn't even realize that was a place until he told me that. So there's a lot of these little tiny airports that you might not even know exist. Then AirMap also gives you a box to check off these other places that we talked about. So you can now fly national parks, NOAA marine protected areas. If a wildfire is happening, then it will live update to notice that, or a temporary flight restriction. So these are the places you can't fly. San Francisco is pretty much a national park along the whole beach and up here by the Golden Gate Bridge too. So these are places you can't fly. So when you add up all these things, these are the places you cannot fly in San Francisco. So you can fly like in downtown. You can actually fly in Berkeley is pretty good. Treasure Island is a great place. But a lot of these really populated areas you cannot fly. So this is all kind of like a lot of, I hate to say no man's land, that sounds mean, but you can fly there. So just take a look before you're doing a shoot or before you buy a drone. Make sure that you can fly in enough places. Cool. All right. That is a lot of questions, or a lot of information. I'm going to pop out really quickly from here and see if we have any questions coming into the live chat. Otherwise, we'll move on to commercial drone use. Though my computer just froze up, so maybe maybe that won't happen. So hobby use is, I mentioned, it's sort of a gray area. Basically, if you're making money off of it, you might not necessarily want to be a hobby user. You'll definitely want to be a commercial user. So let me just check out this chat right now. Oh, there's lots of things happening in the chat. All right, I'll actually have Doug pop out and tell me if there's questions going on.
We have one question from Andrew Bug. What price level do you suggest for starting out with purchasing a drone as a professional photographer?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, we'll actually go to that later because I'll talk about drones that you can buy later. But tons of good conversations happening here. John Monaco and Jonathan Atkin are at it. Jackson, you guys are asking some really good questions. All right, we're gonna hop back into the into my presentation. So I'll pop out of this chat. So we'll talk about commercial drone use, and then I promise we'll get to your question about drones that what I think you should buy. So I do want to give you a history of commercial drone use. I've had people yell at me at my YouTube channel and say, that's illegal, you cannot fly drones. And they were true they were correct a year ago if they had said that. Commercial drone use was illegal a year ago without some exceptions, but it is legal now. So a lot of people think they know what they're talking about and will say, oh, this is illegal. And they were right, but they didn't get the update of what happened this September and August. So up until June, commercial drone use in the US was illegal without what's called a Section 333 exemption. So the law said drone use was illegal, but if you were a company, you could apply for an exemption from the law. To do this was very complicated, obviously tons of paperwork. You also needed a manned pilot's license, which if you've ever flown a drone before, or as you will soon find out once I encourage you to all fly a drone, it's a very different skill set to do a manned pilot's license. So in June of this year, the FAA announced what's called Part 107. This is the rule making commercial drone use legal. So to do this, you basically need to pass a test, and it's a 70-question test, and that became available in August. And once you pass the test, you get a license, and you can legally fly drones for commercial use cases. You still have to follow, you know, all the rules we talked about earlier, like flying over an airport and all that. But you can do it, and you can make money off of it. So as of September 21st, 13,000 people had applied to take it. The exam was just released like a month earlier. 5,000 people had taken it and passed. The FAA estimates 15,000 pilots by the end of 2016. So we're getting close to that. So we'll see if there are 15,000 pilots. I have mine. So the test basically, here's kind of a rundown. It's 60 questions. You'll be asked things like regulation, airspace requirements, weather, loading and performance, operations. So you do need to know, you know, how an airport operates, which way you have to land. So there are questions on that. There are 696 approved testing centers in the US. You can schedule an appointment in advance. You can just walk in. There's an $150 test fee, but if you fail it, you can retake it. We'll talk about what drones to buy later, but there is a company called Autel. They waive your test fee. So if you send in proof that you passed the test, they will give you a reimbursement. So just something to think about when you're deciding what drone to buy. Here's a list of some in my area. I took it at this place in Oakland, which is right near the airport. But there's, again, 696 of these. So I'm hoping there's one near you. So the test is something that you could definitely study for in a few days if you're quick, maybe a few weeks. There are study courses. So you do need to know things like load factor. This is actually a screenshot from the FAA's own study guide. So there are some study courses. So if you want to write these down, I actually studied mine using Drone Pilot Ground School. They give me a coupon code so that I can give out to you guys. You can get $50 off if you use this. UAV Ground School, I've never actually tried them, but they are offering $25 off to readers. And there's also a free FAA study guide. I personally like the online study courses because I like to watch the videos and have someone talk at me, and I'm assuming you do too if you're actually watching this webinar. But if you don't want to pay for that, everything you do need to know is in the FAA study guide. So it's just, I'm not into reading that much. So I would rather take a video course. So once you take and pass the test, you get your certificate. Here is mine. There's me with my certificate. So you do say that you'll follow these rules. You'll keep your aircraft within VLOS, that's the visual line of sight. You can only fly during the day. You cannot fly over people not directly involved in the operation. So if you're, we talked about the video from Skyfall. So if you're an actor or you're a crew member, you're involved in the operation, you've consented to this drone being here, but just a stranger on the street hasn't, so you cannot fly over them. You have to fly less than 100 miles per hour, and then you need to retake the test every 2 years. So you can actually get a waiver for some of these things still. So if you need to fly at night, I don't know if any of you guys are in Florida and have seen the drone show at Disney World, but they actually have, it's like kind of like fireworks, but it's drones at night, and they light up and make different shapes. So if you're at Disney World and you can prove that your drones are safe, you just talk to the FAA and you can get a waiver, so you can fly at night, things like that. So once you pass the test, you become a remote pilot in command. That doesn't necessarily need to be the person controlling the drone. It's just a person taking responsibility for the operation. So if you have someone in your life who's really good at controlling the drone but hasn't passed the test, you can pass the test, or vice versa. Maybe you're a really good photographer and you know what shots you need to take, but you don't want to pass the test. You need to find someone who's a remote pilot in command to be part of your shoot so they can make it legal. So to go to the question of what drone do I buy, actually we'll backtrack. Were there any questions about flying drones legally for commercial or hobby purposes?
There were a couple on flying at night, which you just did, but others are looking at trying to get commercial use of it, such as real estate or working with an architect and a contractor doing different phases of building construction and that type of stuff.
Yeah, so these are all fantastic commercial use cases. So I'll talk about the real estate one. So that one's easy because there's probably not people that you have to fly over. You do have to get that Part 107 test certification that I talked about because I'm assuming that you're making money as a real estate agent. So you can basically pass that test. It's not too traumatizing. Just study for a few days, and then you pretty much can fly over the house. As long as you're not near an airport, that's totally something you can do. I'm assuming the homeowner has given you permission to be on their private property. So once that is all good, then you can fly there. They said a construction use case, also a really, really fantastic use case. So easy. I mean, you're going to be flying during the day. There's not going to be people around who are, strangers walking into your construction site. And so there are tons of people who use drones for real estate to get a better photo, or construction to just have progress pictures of what they're doing, or to actually help them make choices and get data and see how the construction is working. So both great use cases that I highly recommend you would do. Hopefully that answers those questions.
Okay.
Great, so you asked about what drone I should buy. There are so many choices. I would say, so you guys are all photographers, so some must-have specs that I would recommend you look for. You're going to want a gimbal. So a gimbal is what stabilizes the camera. So a 3-axis gimbal is probably the word that you'll hear the most. That's great. So the camera, instead of being sort of on a flat plane, even if the drone tilts, the camera will sort of move with it. So it won't be that sort of shaky video that you might see in past drones. If you look at drone video from like 5 years ago, gimbals didn't exist then. So you definitely want to make sure you're buying something with a 3-axis gimbal. The camera, this is kind of personal standards. I think 4K is probably the most common that a photographer would want. But you know, the Phantom 3 is 1080p, not 4K, and I still think is fine. It's really up to your personal standards. I will say, don't fall for the HD trap. I I don't know if you have feelings about this, but high definition video, I'm like, what does that mean? And I've definitely like reviewed drones that cost, you know, $100, and they say has HD video. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And it'll be like, I guess, high definition video, but like really, really horrible quality. So don't fall for that. And then you definitely want something with FPV, that means first person view. So basically the ability to stream live video somehow. It could be through goggles, but I really don't like flying that way, or a smartphone or a tablet. So the DJI line of drones, you basically hook your iPhone up to the controller, and then you download the DJI Go app, and then you can see exactly what the video is streaming live. This will just help your video immensely to see and not be sort of blind shooting. So here are some examples of the low-end options, and I think we're going to put all these links together to send out to you guys. So don't feel like you have to write these down. So on the low end, I sort of compiled these for people with photography in mind. There are lots of drones out there. The Phantom 3 Standard is a great one because of its low price point. So this one isn't 4K, it's 2.7K, but that could be good enough for depending on what you're trying to do. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, works for Good Morning America, and she was talking about, you know, what kind of drones they're using, and I was like, oh, like this is only 4K, like I'm not sure if that's good enough. And she's like, what? Like we can't even air 4K, like we have to compress that down for TV, which I didn't realize. So maybe 2.7K is good enough. And then this gives you a live video feed, 720p. The battery life lasts 25 minutes on one charge. So I think this is a good option if you're looking for, you know, something on the lower end. This is a high-end drone on the lower end. And as you know, I mean, $500 does seem like a lot, but when you factor in, you know, how much have you guys paid for a camera body? I think this is a great deal. I do want to throw in my disclaimer. Always practice with the cheap drone that you can afford to lose, or crash into a tree, or crash into a pool. So I'm talking, you know, something that's like $40 from Amazon. That link is just, if you type it on Amazon, like toy drones. I would highly recommend you buy one of those. They're harder to fly. These nicer drones will automatically stabilize. They'll lock their altitude. The higher end drones are easier to fly. The cheaper drones are harder to fly. So I would recommend practicing on those and get the hang of it. Because if you can fly a drone like that, then you can easily fly a Phantom. I know someone who bought a Phantom and crashed it into the pool within about an hour of owning it. So don't be that person. Kind of on the mid-tier, the DJI Phantom 4 is $1,500. The Autel X-Star, I actually love this drone, is $700. They're the company that gives you the $150 rebate if you pass your Part 107 test. So that's sort of an incentive to save some money there. The Unique Typhoon is about $1,000. All three of these drones offer at least 4K video. The Unique Typhoon is really cool. It has collision avoidance in the front. So if you're the real estate photographer and you're flying into a house and you're not that good, the drone will not crash into the house. It'll just sort of hover in front and it won't go ahead. The Phantom 4, the reason why it's so much more expensive, there's a few reasons, but one of them is actually it has sense and avoid on all four sides. So it can see if there's, if you're doing a reverse shot and backing into something and you're going to back into a tree, again, the drone will just stop and hover so you won't crash into a tree. So the Autel one doesn't have any of those sensors to see obstacles around it, so that's why you're paying less money for it. And then I want to show you my favorite recent pick. You might have seen the Mavic Pro. It's $1,000. This is what it looks like. The arms actually fold up, and it's super highly portable. It folds up to the size of a water bottle. This is super stable. It shoots 4K video. The reason why I love this one so much more than any of these is they're small, a lot smaller than drones were like 3 years ago. But these are still a little cumbersome to take around. And I want you to think about how many photos have you taken on your DSLR, or whatever camera you're using, and how many photos have you taken on your smartphone? And you've probably taken more on your smartphone simply because you always have it with you, because it's just in your pocket. You see something cool on the street, you photograph it. And I feel the same way about the Mavic versus the Phantom 4, or any of these other drones. These, you have to sort of plan to bring them around with you. You're not just gonna have this in your purse all day. But a Mavic actually folds up to the size of a water bottle, so it's reasonable to have it in your purse all day. So I think this one's is a good choice for your money, just because you'll get more use out of it, especially if you're traveling. One of these is going to be a completely different suitcase that you're going to have to check. This one you could just fit inside your already existing camera bag. Then on the high end, there's things like, the Inspire 2 with the Zenmuse X5S, and I'll let you look at the specs and determine for yourself what you need. So this is going to be like $6,000 for the whole camera setup. Obviously way better video quality. There's actually a video with the guy from Stranger Things, the kid in Stranger Things, and it's a short film, and it was shot entirely on the Inspire 2. We're running low on time, so I'm not going to show it to you, but I'll let you see the link later and watch it yourself. So since we are approaching the time, I do want to give you some information on communities that you can join. If you have, I love how active this little chat is right now. There's another really great chat room, commercialdrones.slack.com. You do have to request to join, but I don't see why they accept everyone. The Academy of Model Aeronautics, AMA, you might have heard of it. They kind of are sort of like the overseers of everything RC, and is a great place to go. I would highly recommend looking for local meetup groups. I started flying in Orange County, and there's an LAOC drone user group, and I found it on the site meetup.com. And such a good place just to learn how to fly. You're not going to learn how to fly in a drone webinar, but that means you really have to go out and find people and fly with them. There's a really great group called Amelia Drone Hearts for women. So all my ladies out there in the audience, I would recommend you join this Facebook group. You can always look at my site, and my email's here. So if you do have questions that you don't want to ask out loud today, Sally@thedronegirl.com, email me and just say, hi, I was in your ASMP webinar, and I'll make a better effort to respond to you quickly. And then you can also find me on my social media channels here. But I guess we will hop into questions. I don't know how we want to go about doing this.
All right. Sally, if you go up to the top and say stop sharing, you'll come back to the full screen.
I will do that. Now you can see our faces.
All right. One big question that people have asked is insurance.
Yes, that's such a good question. I'm glad you asked that. So actually the FAA has no legal requirement for insurance. If you're a commercial drone operator, let's take a step back. If you're a car operator, you're driving a car, you're legally required to have insurance to operate a car. That is not the case for drones. So there's no legal requirement to have insurance. That being said, usually a lot of the shoots that I do will say, we're only going to book you to be our drone photographer if you have insurance. So there are companies out there that will insure drones. But I think, I'm looking at this chat from like Evan Parker. He's saying I add a premium for the drone footage due to insurance and equipment costs. So often you're a photographer and, the director of Skyfall has contacted you to be the drone operator, make sure that you do have insurance. You want that for yourself, and say, we're going to have to add this on, but you're not legally required to have it.
Okay. A point to everybody that if you have your photography insurance, liability and all that, that does not mean it covers drones.
Mm-hmm.
You have to check with your insurance carrier. One of the ASMP insurance carriers is Allstate. They have a great policy, but they do not include drones, but they're looking into it. Others do have drones, but you need to look at what the policies are. Also, you have to look at what you're doing in terms of being commercial, in terms of the FAA. If you're flying, for example, if you're flying and you're shooting pictures of your house or your neighbor's house for fun to put on Facebook, that is non-commercial. You do not need a special license and that for that type of photography. However, under the FAA, and this is as of a year ago when I talked to the rep, if there is any money involved, even a penny, it means that turns your photography into commercial use, which is another leap and hurdle and hoop you have to go through. For example, you shoot a picture of your house or your neighbor's house and put it on Facebook. Fine, no problem. However, if you or your neighbor takes those pictures and gives it to the real estate agent to sell your house, even though you're not being paid a penny, your neighbor is getting money through your aerial pictures, and therefore, even though you don't make any money and your client does, that is now considered commercial use under the FAA rules. So you got to be clear on what you're doing. And that there was a thing about a year and a half ago up in Spokane. One of the newspaper photographers shot a winter leap into the frozen lake type of event. He shot it on his day off, didn't earn a penny, gave the video to his newspaper, who posted it online. Well, online, the paper sells advertising. Even though the staff photographer didn't make a penny, the fact that it was used to generate funds with those ads deemed the use of the footage as commercial, and the FAA sent a cease and desist order. And the fines for violating the commercial use can be up to $10,000. So that's what you need to keep in mind. Okay. Let's see. What about commercial rigs that are using DSLRs? What type of systems are out there?
Yeah. So I do have to say, actually, the Inspire, the one that's $6,000, is really incredible quality. There are rigs that can hold a DSLR or a Red Epic. DJI is sort of the industry leader in drone rigs, and they actually will sell that too. So they're out there. They're just going to be quite a bit more money, and then not to mention, you've also paid a lot for a rig that can carry the weight of a DSLR, and then you're also, risking putting your DSLR up there. But that's definitely out there.
Are there any other questions? If we didn't get to them, can you please do another chat question? I've got pages and pages of chats I've got to go through, and we don't have the time. So anything else?
A new message. How is it Mavic Pro on stills for those of us who are primarily still photographers? Yeah, I mean, you can look at the specs to see if the quality is good enough for you. I have read debates from people who say that the Phantom 4 is better, but yeah, someone said download sample images from different drones, and a lot of it is up to personal view. You know, people say, you know, the unique drone has a little bit of a fisheye, but then some people like that look. So, you know, I think, you know, what Gustav said, you need to look at the images for yourself. Everyone has feelings. Kyle has feelings. The Phantom 4 is better. What am I flying right now? I'm flying the Mavic right now. It just came out. So I've only flown it a few times because I literally got it last week. But I really, oh, someone says, I flew my Mavic around New Orleans last week. It's amazing. Yes. For me, the biggest issue is portability. I know, you know, someone mentioned earlier, you know, they do want to use it to work in construction. In that kind of case, you would just want, you know, a really, you know, you could just have it in your car and break it out when you need to. But the Mavic, to me, I'm the type of person who, you know, likes to go hang out at the beach with my friends and then have my drone there in case, you know, the lighting looks really good that day and I want to take a picture. That to me is the ideal use case for myself, which is why I love that.
One of the things with the drone cameras, though, is that not all of them shoot RAW, and you're going to have to look at the specs for each particular drone camera that you're going to do. And if you want to get a rig that will take your 5D Mark III or a Nikon DSLR up, then we're talking much bigger bucks for the complexity of the drone and the gimbal and everything else. So again, as Sally suggests, start off small and learn the basics with a small drone that doesn't have auto stabilization, auto hovering and all that. It's like learning shooting with a manual camera. If you can shoot manual and follow focus and everything, then autofocus is going to be a breeze. If you can master the complexities of a drone that has everything manual, then going to something that has automatic safety features is going to make life much more easier. For
sure. Yeah, good conversations happening here. Definitely feel free. Again, my email is sally@thedronegirl.com. So feel free if you didn't want to ask something in the chat. I know I'm like scared to ask questions publicly, so feel free to email me.
All right. I think that does it. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, you guys.